So I've heard this take before. Whenever I made one of my videos about where I predicted or hypothesized, I won't say it was a prediction, that we may be seeing Spider-Man come to the Xbox platform, a lot of people jumped on me. Some people have called me port beggar, like, oh, you PC players or you Xbox players don't have any games, so you want our games. And you see this sentiment on Twitter. It doesn't necessarily help drive conversation, but you'll see it sometimes. In fact, just the other day, I was perusing Twitter and I got to see this take by somebody who was actually on here. And I thought it was quite interesting that they made these claims and they were actually talking about how maybe on the PC side, in order for PC players to stop complaining about, say, these PlayStation exclusives not being on their platform day one, maybe, PC players or somebody on the PC side should do what Sony is doing. In fact, the person who made this claim is a gentleman named Reforge Gaming. I was going to not play the video of the clip I found on Twitter, but I thought in order to be fair, I'd rather go ahead and play it so that we can hear and, properly contextualize what's being said.
Commentary about games not the PlayStation commentary about games not coming to PC within 2 to 3 years. You PC guys are hilarious. You're hilarious as you get really upset and really angry at multiple bad multi-platform launches. And
no, I haven't seen anyone get upset that I know of. People are just disappointed. They're like, this kind of sucks. The same amount of disappointment I've seen shared by even console players who have dealt with bad ports. We played Jedi Survivor. And even on PlayStation, I saw people jumping on me, even on the consoles. In fact, on the PC side, people were more open to, wanting to tweak their versions of the game. And this is something about PC players. Oh, my game is kind of buggy. Hey, have you tried these little 5 steps? It's all about the troubleshooting and the tinkering. But on the console side, you're locked in. So if you go through my video for Jedi Survivor, where I made a video titled There's a Fix, it's got about 13,000 views. You can read the comments on that video for yourself and kind of see the reactions. You can also go into Callisto Protocol videos as well and read the reactions. And you'll see that almost everyone kind of had, similar levels of disappointment. And some people are like, well, I guess, maybe we'll buy the game later. And what's even fun is, on the PC side, you have the refund policies that can actually help alleviate these issues. So I don't know about angry, but hey, maybe there's somebody out there that's upset.
Multiple really bad ports to PC.
As well as console. I just named Callisto Protocol and Jedi Survivor. And what's the name? Forspoken, too. So
here's an idea. Maybe get your own games. Do you ever consider that?
Now, I don't know how to deal with, this claim because, again, a PC is a neutral platform. It's a computing device that has access to online gaming, online gaming retailers that sell digital games, that sell digital products. Steam comes to mind, Epic Games comes to mind. And so we don't necessarily have the centralized, or I'll say the localized usage of brand names and brand machines to be able to distribute games just the way you have with Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. So I don't necessarily think that really makes a whole lot of sense in its own standing. Perhaps you will also see publishers who will prioritize making their games only on PC. But Valve, which is basically the parent company of Steam, is not necessarily interested in doing that much anymore. They made the Half-Life games. They made, I think, the Portal games, if I'm correct. And we probably have had games like that in the past. But that distribution is not necessarily something that, we have many people who want to come in and get that done. Why? Because they have to pay for their marketing costs and all that stuff. They'd rather just let Sony and Xbox and Microsoft basically, do the heavy hitting by just having the consoles and the machines and all that and having the ecosystems. And then, pretty much they can just focus on making their own game if they're actually making a console version of the game. And on PC, there's just a plethora of games too. Some games never make it to console, or they make it to console years later. Like maybe I can't remember if it was Baldur's Gate or some of these, top-down RPG games that are really intricate that have never necessarily come to PC and eventually, come to console and eventually start coming to the different consoles. But let's keep watching though, because I want to get the full context of this clip. Even though I'm sure there's like hours and hours, but it's probably a live stream because he streams every day.
Maybe PlayStation investing in their ecosystem, their hardware, maybe Mark Cerny creating a relationship of trust with developers for the PlayStation 5. Maybe somebody in the PC realm should do that. Maybe do that before talking big about PlayStation not bringing games to PC fast enough. Or here's a brilliant idea: buy a PS5.
Okay, I get it. I get it. I have a PS5. Many PC gamers who want to play, any first party games, they usually go ahead and get a PS5. And it's not really a big deal because you understand that this is Sony's business model. This is how they want to basically go ahead and run their ship. And I think maybe there might be somebody out there that might be complaining about this, but I really don't see much of the people who are doing that. I've also, heard, some people have said, well, on my feed, people engage in these conversations. I've seen some people pretty much complain about it, and I can give it to them and say, okay, possibly there might be people who are looking forward to, these games. They're excited about them, and they think, possibly Sony could prioritize this market. Now, let's go into some data. The reason why video games from the first party, publishers are making their way to PC, whether they come day one or whether they show up day 5, is not necessarily because, somebody just said they wanted it. It's because the data leans towards these console makers actually trying to get their games into the PC market because there is a big, massive player base that's there. A player base that's actually bigger than all of the console base. There's a little report that VentureBeat went ahead and cited and said, according to this report, there were 1.1 billion PC players and 611 million console players in 2022. In fact, in 2022, there was a 2.2% decline, which was mostly due to a 4.2% in drop in the console gaming market as the PC games market increased by 1.8. So if you think about this, you're going to see that the PC market is getting an upward trend. It's slowed down. If you actually try to go back and see the growth of PC gamers from a few years back, I think it was around 2016, 2017, the PC market in terms of sales of hardware exploded. I think what was happening, and this is a hypothesis, this is nothing regarding to the data, was a lot of the, gamers that were playing at that time were on the PlayStation 4. And I think most of them were probably maybe craving a little bit more performance. And I say this because myself and a whole host of other people moved to PC gaming around that time. And even since then, more people had been moving. And in this particular, desire, or with this desire, a lot of people decided that they were going to go ahead and maybe try gaming on a gaming PC because at that time, the PlayStation 4 Pro, I think it was still a conversation. It hadn't necessarily happened. So a lot of people pretty much decided, let's go ahead and get ourselves a gaming PC. To add to that, gaming PCs were actually quite affordable. A lot of components, you'll go to, say, Austin Evans' channel and look at his builds called the Boson 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. You're going to realize that those, builds, you basically could make them for like $300-$400. He was building these PCs for like $300, and they were running games like Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. They were running GTA at, past 30 FPS. I shouldn't say past 60 FPS. Some games were running past 60 FPS. Shadow of Mordor was running at like 70, 80 FPS. And then games like, GTA was 40 FPS. If you added a little bit more money, you could easily get 60 FPS on these machines. So I think this kind of maybe started to move people to this direction. You also have games like Destiny that came out, The Division. These games were running at higher frame rates on PC, and they having big player bases, even games like Overwatch as well at that time, seemed to lean towards, people moving more and more into the PC side. I just think it was just the right market conditions. So Sony moving their, day one exclusives to PC is in order for them to be able to leverage this huge player base that's available there. As much as they will be stiff-necked and saying, you're not gonna get games day one, or you're not gonna get a game till about a year and a half later. It's not like they're trying to purposefully make the game exclusive or whatever it is. It is to their advantage. Why? The development of the game and making a PC port, it gives them time to actually make the PC port right. So even Mr. Reforge Gaming talking about the disappointment that has been seen, or he said anger, I say it's disappointment, is because a lot of these third-party studios have had to pretty much deal with making multiple versions of their games day one. So it's not really easy for them to balance and optimize everything at the same time. Hence, unlike your PlayStation first-party games, they have to do all the work themselves, and possibly one has got to take a hit. If it's not the PC one, it'll be the Xbox one, or it'll be the PlayStation one, or it'll be all of them in terms of performance. So I think it's to Sony's advantage, and even to the PC gamers' advantage, that they get it right, because we saw The Last of Us get rushed out the door, which was something that I was shocked, because Sony has been able to bring much better quality, even previous to that, their worst one was Horizon Zero Dawn, not Forbidden West. Its PC port was not the best at launch, but it wasn't The Last of Us Part 1 bad. It was Last of Us Part 1 was terrible, based on things that we saw in terms of bugs and so on and so forth. And so this is something that I thought that if they had to delay the release of the PC games, it's not necessarily only because they want to make the console games, the console players feel like they have access to the exclusives first, which is a primary benefit, but it also is beneficial that they're able to knock out the exclusives as fast as possible. The final piece, and I thought this was going to be interesting, was, he said, why not somebody on the PC side provide something like getting us our own games or developing trust with developers and so on and so forth. And to that I say, on the PC side of things, because it's a neutral platform, we actually have a lot of benefits that console platforms don't provide. Like your online connectivity on PC is free. If you want to play Call of Duty, you want to play Fortnite, you want to play Rocket League, FIFA, you want to play Gotham Knights, if you're into Gotham Knights, you want to play a fighting game like Mortal Kombat and so on and so forth, you don't have to pay for a service like PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live. These are services that are just provided for you for free. And I think on the PC side, if you really want to say, okay, which one is the money saver? Actually, gaming on a PC saves you a whole bunch of money because you don't have to spend every year renewing your PlayStation Plus license. Now, a few years ago, this was a huge deal because, people were torn. They were like, man, all my friends play on PlayStation, right? But now we're seeing more games move to the crossplay, directive, and it's becoming more and more prevalent that, this value is something that people ought to consider if they're trying to game on PC. So a game like Street Fighter 6 that I'm looking forward to playing, and a game like Mortal Kombat 1, it's imperative that I actually get myself the PC version at least, because I think crossplay is going to be a thing. In fact, crossplay was opened up in Mortal Kombat 11 as a beta testing thing. So they haven't necessarily confirmed if there's going to be crossplay in this new Mortal Kombat 1, but we're going to see if that's actually a thing. But, studios like NetherRealms are actually going ahead to check it out. We don't know if EA is going to implement it with their new soccer game. We'll see how all that falls, but it's not going to be too long before crossplay becomes a norm or an expectation in any game that requires connectivity. Also, things like refund policies and things like, the Epic Games Store, even being beneficial for developers who are trying to save money is huge. I mean, I'm talking huge. Sony cannot say a single word when it comes to comparing, how much developer fees are compared to Epic Games developer sharing is. If we take a quick glance at what Epic Games takes whenever you sell your game on their platform, you see that this is a very, very competitive, proposition. In fact, Epic Games takes only a 12% commission on game sales. Now, arguably, Steam is high. They take about 30%, but with the services that Steam provides for, its community, I'd say that, this is a competitive thing. This is Epic Games pretty much keeping Steam, on notice so that they don't necessarily get out of hand. And this 12% was kind of a huge incentive for, a lot of gaming companies to launch their games as one-year exclusives on Epic before eventually making it to Steam. It worked for a few games. Borderlands 3 did it. Metro Exodus did it. But a lot of people are already on Steam and they don't care about the percentage sharing. They'll pay the full price, which still benefits the developers. Even though it's 70% or whatever it is, it's still a thing. So developers now are no longer necessarily seeming to prioritize the Epic Games Store. Some still are, don't get me wrong, before they eventually bring it to Steam. But by and large, a lot of developers seem to have been moving away from that practice. So this conversation about PC players being port beggars or whatever it is, I think it's a conversation that is not wanting to steep itself in nuance, or a conversation that's paying attention to people who may not necessarily understand their own benefits as, they are available being a PC gamer. Being a PC gamer, you have a lot of benefits. You can, pretty much upgrade your machine whenever you choose. You have a lot of flexibility and a lot of, freedom, a lot of cost savings that are not available on console ever. So I don't necessarily think that that categorization makes sense, because even though we may not have a company that's sitting there going, oh, I'm making PC games, which makes no sense if you think about it, because most of them are making PC games, and only Sony is not making PC games day one. Literally, well, I say only Sony. There's a handful of gaming, publishers and studios that are not making their games PC day one. So, I don't think that argument makes any sense. Big publishers, Ubisoft, EA, Rockstar, if they can, who else? Take-Two Interactive, Gearbox, all of these folk launch their games day one on PC. So, again, it's just one of those conversations that seems to come from a place where you don't necessarily know the PC ecosystem. So I recommend that, maybe we'll do a little bit of research before we make statements like that. But let me hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching the video. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.